y'all, I'm Laura Richardson with Relevate, and we're bringing you another episode from our new construction series, How to Build a Home. So today we're going to be talking about your framing and pre-drywall portion of the phase of the home build. So pre-drywall inspection, just quick little standard snapshot of this. Think of your home build as kind of like the middle ground. So you're looking at the skeleton or the bones of the home. So you have everything roughed in when you're talking about plumbing, electrical, and so forth. That stage before your drywall or your encapsulation goes up should get an inspection. So it is always good if you are working with a real estate agent or directly with a builder that you ask for that inspection. And it's good to be upfront about that really early on. The reason I say that is there's typically a very short window of where the home is finished. It goes through that county or local municipality inspection. The builder kind of gives it the okay. And then they rapidly start doing all of the things when it comes to drywall. It's usually about a week. So you want to make sure that's on somebody's radar so they can give you, your agent, and your future inspector a heads up to get that scheduled, get that knocked out. And then your inspector's inspection report will be given to the builder and all the things can be reviewed with you and errors can be fixed. Keep in mind, builders are human too, guys. They're going to make some errors here and there are some things that even the county or local guy may not catch. So don't rely just on that inspection. You want to make sure that you get that third-party inspector, who's kind of like your mediator too, get them to take a look, and then you can get all those things amended. So something to really pay attention to on this walkthrough or this portion of your build is look for structural stuff. Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking, I'm not a structural engineer. I don't have a degree in this. Like, what am I even looking for? Well, one of the big things that should jump out to you is if you ever see boards, like there's two of them kind of placed against each other, and it just looks a little different than what you're seeing around. So it's almost like extra bracing of some sort. Or if you see like things that have been kind of soldered together, so jerry-rigged a little bit, that is kind of a quick little red flag that something's been messed with, something's been amended. Anytime you mess with anything structural, and this is coming from the foundation to like the roof line and your trusses and all that good stuff, you should have an engineer sign off on that because you're talking about load-bearing stuff. So ask your inspector about it, but also call attention to it when you're doing those walkthroughs because it's always good to just be proactive. Another one that's a big one is metal plating over any of the framework where you see wires going through the framing. So the intention behind these really small but very intentional little plates is when they put the drywall up. The hope is that as you're hanging your shelving or your future photographs or whatever on your wall, you're gonna hit that metal plate instead of going through the wall and potentially hitting the wiring, all right? Because what happens when you have a metal nail and it hits electricity? More than likely you're gonna get electrocuted, all right? So we like to try to prevent that, so that's where those little metal plates are really important. You're gonna see those everywhere. So you wanna kind of just pay attention and eyeball. Your inspector will do this as well, but it's good to try to catch those because those, again, are one of those things you can't really fix after the fact. They've gotta be done during the build process. Another one is looking at your foundation. So like, how are things curing? Do you see any cracks that need to be kind of maybe monitored or addressed even? Always ask questions, guys. If you don't understand or it just looks off than what you're envisioning in your head, be proactive and make that uncomfortability known to your builder. Also, is the home still being exposed to the elements? Well, yes, until you get that drywall put in and the windows put in, the home is still being open to the outside. So, of course, there are certain months of the year we get a little bit more rain or maybe even some freezing stuff like snow and ice. Snow is not super common here in North Carolina, but anytime that moisture is able to get into the home, so like in the summer, we're not dealing necessarily with that, it's just high levels of humidity. The home is absorbing that moisture. Now, the wood will dry out, but we want to make sure that it's dry before we start encapsulating it with drywall. So it is kind of normal to see staining like on subflooring and things like that, but always good to get your moisture reader. Make sure there's nothing that's super entrapped with water or that water is still being able to get in through like seam lines not being closed and stuff like that. So this is your time to amend those things. And then also, are all electrical items or plumbing rough-ins, HVAC stuff, is all of that present? So keep in mind, you're not going to have sinks and trim work and all that stuff done at this stage. So plumbing is literally going to be tubes. but you want to make sure that it's present. So for example, let's say that somewhere along the way you guys changed the game plan, and instead of having a bathtub and shower combo, you went to a full-fledged just shower. So like you opened up the space. Well, hopefully you're not seeing separate rough ends for the plumbing tubes, which are essentially your intake and outtake pipes. So just kind of eyeball that stuff. I know that if you're not in the business every day, those things are harder to jump out at you, but obviously your real estate agent, whomever you're working with, should be able to have your plans in front of you as you're walking around, and kind of just make sure you're taking note of that. Another big one is grading. So keep in mind that the soil and the outside environment is going to change dramatically from the start of the build to the finish of the build. So grading, if there's any areas of concern where you're like, hey, are you guys going to backfill this? Does it look like it's kind of sloping a little too sharply going towards the house where water runoff is just going to dump into the foundation? Go ahead and ask your builder about that. Like, hey, what is the game plan? What are we going to do here? I've been on some build sites where they had to bring in just dump trucks worth of stuff in order to backfill that. Another thing, kind of proactively, when you go under contract, grading is something specifically I always like to ask builders about, especially if you're on a hilly slope. It's not like a flat lot, because if there's the possibility as they're excavating to place the home that they're removing a lot of dirt, chances are they're going to have to bring some back in order to fill things and make sure there's a natural order of events for water flow. Who takes the brunt of that cost? Is it worked into the price of the home? If there's something abnormal that happens, is it the builder that takes it on? Do they only take it on to a certain degree? Or is it an out-of-pocket expense for you? I would hate for you to have to pay that kind of out-of-pocket expense, but sometimes depending on how the contracts work, that can happen. And so it's just a good question to know from the get-go. The last thing is look for finished versus unfinished intended spaces. And what I mean by that is you can already kind of tell where you're going to have those unfinished storage rooms versus rooms that are clearly going to be closed off and livable spaces. So if you have an open floor plan that is essentially already got designated unfinished space that maybe you were switching to living space, you should see ductwork going from each room into that now changed space. Be sure to eyeball that, because you want to make sure when they start doing that drywall, which you're not going to be coming back for a while for the next kind of round of inspections, you want to make sure that all the things that were supposed to get finished get done. So hopefully this gives you a really good nutshell of what to expect during this stage, some of which you need to be proactive about, some of which you need to be vocal about, and as always, have good representation that's going to help facilitate these conversations, whether it's your buyer's agent or potentially your inspector you've hired. And also, I highly recommend that inspector also being the same person that you hire once the home is completed. I'm Laura Richardson with Relevate, and we will see you on our next episode.